6 with Academy Award nominations. Given everything that's happened, are they kidding me? And John Bolton on Donald Trump's big trip to elite land, that's Davos World Economic Forum, and why Trump will once again outfox his critics. Plus, Ann Coulter on a new California law, just as I left California, that could, yes, I kid you not, let illegal immigrants vote. Oh, goody. But first, the deep state strikes back and Schumer's revenge. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Do you all remember when liberals went nuts when they found out that George W. Bush, when he was a candidate for the presidency, was a member of Skull and Bones? Remember Skull and Bones? It's that Yale University super mysterious club that was founded in 1832. It's really creepy. Well, it turns out that according to an informant, anti-Trump FBI investigator Peter Strzok and his gal pal FBI lawyer Lisa Page spoke in text messages about a secret society within the FBI itself that would convene apparently off-site, presumably, I don't know, to discuss things like insurance policies and other benevolent matters involving Donald Trump. Well, Senator Ron Johnson today was flabbergasted at what he learned.
What this is all about is further evidence of corruption, more than bias, but corruption at the highest levels of the FBI and that secret society. We have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site. There's so much smoke here. There's so much suspicion. Are there similar individuals, highly biased, political operatives burrowed into the Department of Justice as well?
Well, you combine this with the suddenly missing 5 months of texts between the two lovebirds, and you do have a full-blown corruption scandal on your hands involving the very people who were leading the investigation into both Mrs. Clinton's private email server and the Russia collusion nonsense involving Trump. I have a question. How are heads not already rolling just knowing what we know now? Well, on my radio show this morning, former U.S. Attorney Joe DeGeneva, he made the case that this all indicates that we need a big change of leadership at the FBI and at the Justice Department.
Quite apparent that Christopher Wray is not up to the job of being FBI director, that he is undermining its credibility, not strengthening it, and that he is completely controlled by the upper bureaucracy at the FBI. The other real problem is Rod Rosenstein. And I don't think there is any doubt whatsoever that Rosenstein is too close to Comey, too close to Mueller, too close to Wray, and too close to a whole bunch of people. Jeff Sessions seems to have decided that if he can have a little bit of fun within the goal, within the boundaries of the playing field and not get anybody mad at him, that's going to be enough to get the job done.
It was ugly. It was brutal. And I have to say, the American public has a right to know what, if any, crimes or other improprieties were committed by members of the Obama administration and members of the current FBI. But I have to tell you, the bleeding, this has got to stop now. And the DOJ and the FBI, they have to be purged of anyone actively working to undermine the Trump administration with a political agenda, of course, and be purged of anyone who refused to remove those or report those committing this type of wrongdoing, who's serving from the government. They shouldn't be serving the government at all. And I'm not talking, just don't transfer them to another office. They must be fired. And now, on to Schumer's revenge. There were brief moments in the lead up to the government shutdown last week when Chuck Schumer seemed to be coming to his senses on maybe the issue of the wall. Well, here he was on Friday.
In exchange for strong DACA protections, I reluctantly put the border wall on the table for discussion. Even that was not enough to entice the president to finish the deal.
Now it's been announced that Huckster Chuck is taking border wall funding off the table and in immigration policy negotiations. Has this man totally lost his mind? I mean, he just had his political clock cleaned for this ridiculous government shutdown that got him nothing. And now he's going to take away the one immigration must-have for Republicans in the White House? I don't think so. Oh, and as for the moronic flake Graham Durbin bill that Trump nixed last week, and that all led, remember, to Schumer shutting down the government and that big hissy fit?
2 weeks ago, we outlined a path forward on 4 issues: serious border security, an end to chain migration, the cancellation of the outdated and unsafe visa lottery, and a permanent solution to DACA. Unfortunately, the Flake Graham-Durbin agreement does not meet these benchmarks. In fact, it would not secure our border, encourage more illegal immigration, increase chain migration, and retain the visa lottery system. In short, it's totally unacceptable to the president and should be declared dead on arrival.
Oh, I love hearing dead on arrival when it comes to a bad immigration bill. Building the border wall was not just the president's signature campaign issue. It's what the American people want. Remember that new Harvard-Harris poll we told you about last night? A lot of people haven't focused on this. It showed that 61% of those surveyed feel border security today is inadequate. 54% of respondents want a wall or other barrier built across the U.S.-Mexican border. Couldn't be clearer. And while Americans do want to help the DACA people, I guess, and give some kind of protection to them, they don't want to be left defenseless to do it. That makes sense. Look, Chuck Schumer is under enormous pressure these days. A host of left-wing interest groups are insisting that he resist the president and fight him on everything, including immigration. Now, why are they doing this? Because they want to see the dawn of a new governing majority, and it's coming across the border. In the spring of next year, we're going to talk about this later on with Coulter, California will begin automatically registering any adult who obtains or renews a driver's license to vote in the state. Now, California has been granting driver's licenses to illegals since 2015. Fox News estimates that 1 million illegal immigrants already have secured a license to drive in the Golden State. This was by the end of last year. So now turning them into instant voters is sure to change the outcome of any election. Well, now it's a supermajority in that state for Democrats, but still, that is shocking. And speaking of these issues that the president and so many of us, and I know so many of you really care about, you hear a lot about chain migration, but I thought it was really important for you to understand what it is, how it transforms the country, and why it must end, also part of the Trump must-haves on immigration. This is a White House graphic that we share with you exclusively tonight. You can see it. For every hour, the U.S. settles enough migrants to fill a small auditorium. That's really small print, isn't it? Every day, enough to fill a large high school. Every month, we resettle enough to fill an entire football stadium to capacity. Every year, an immigrant population larger than the size of Washington, D.C. Every year, we resettle a 174,000 parents of foreign-born naturalized citizens. Now, remember, most of those are older, elderly. They're not going to be paying into a lot of taxes. They're going to be taking a lot of services, though. Now, they're paying basically nothing into the system. Once they're naturalized, they immediately qualify for all the welfare programs, benefits. So basically, you pay for their retirement. That's a nice deal if you can get it. And all of this probably, why? Well, in that Harvard-Harris poll, 65 to 35% of Americans support a DACA deal that ends chain migration, eliminates the visa lottery, and secures the border wall. 79% of the people in the same poll want immigration based on merit, not family ties. So 79% agree with the president. It's time for the Democrats to start putting the hopes and dreams of the American people first. It is now crystal clear that Schumer and the Democrats are going to run over the American worker and risk their safety, if that's what it takes, to tilt local and national elections in their favor. And that's the angle. Joining us now for reaction from Roanoke, Virginia, is Republican Congressman Bob Goodlatte. He's the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. We have a lot to get to, Congressman, on these text messages disappearing, the secret society, all of it. I want to get you first on this issue of chain migration, because I hear a lot from Democrats about how Republicans are now anti-family, Congressman. But as you saw with that very difficult to read graphic, We are resettling huge populations into the United States, not based on merit, but based on distant family relatives.
Absolutely, and they're not even going to be reunified in any short period of time, because the amount of the length of the waiting list is so long that there's no real family reunification. Our bill allows the immediate family, the spouse and minor children, to come into the United States. And that is very important for families. But these extended families do not benefit the United States in the sense that a merit-based system would, where people come here based upon education, job skills, job offers, and training. That's what we need in our economy, not people who are coming here based upon random needs for our country. And
it's 400,000.
Visa lottery is even more ridiculous.
No, it's preposterous. It's 400,000 plus people every year coming in on this extended family chain migration. 400,000. It is a complete scandal. I want to move to what's happening with these revelations about the FBI, the disappearing text messages. Of course, now the understanding from an informant that there was a secret society discussed in text messages. I'm not sure what secrets they were talking about, but it doesn't sound too good to me. Specifically, the text messages, Congressman. Joe DeGenevis said on my radio show that the NSA has every text message, that we can get those text messages if need be. What do you know about that?
We should search every place to find them, because I think they still exist in some form somewhere. I'm pleased that Attorney General Sessions has made a commitment to investigate this and find them, but we should also undertake whether there is some way to gather them from some other source. It is very important, but even the text messages we have are alarming, and the secret society just harks back to the text we saw before in December talking about the insurance policy. What has been going on in that 5-month period of time? Well, we know one thing for sure, and that is that these people hostile to the president have not been conducting themselves in a manner that befits the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
How does anyone have faith in the integrity of this investigation, Congressman, when we hear that in December, we heard all text messages had been turned over, correct? On December 13th, Congress was told you have them all between Strzok and Page, and a number of others as well. Then you guys just learned, oops, we actually didn't give you 5 months, critical time period of text messages. And now we find out secret society. We find out, that all these people donating to Democrats, connected to the old administration. How does the average person think the FBI isn't cooking the books here? And I love so many of the agents, but at the upper levels of the FBI.
Well, there is no question that there are several people in headquarters that we have a tremendous amount of questions for, and we'll be some of them we've already interviewed. Some of them will be calling back for further questioning. Undoubtedly, that will include former Director Comey. It also is very true, as you say, that the overwhelming majority of the FBI works hard every day to keep us safe, to combat terrorism, to find and convict criminals. This is an organization that is the premier law enforcement in the world, and it is getting besmirched by a few people, and they need to clean house there. And Director Wray has been told that by a number of people.
Do you have
and
full
I'm
faith
disappointed that we haven't seen that.
Do you have full faith in Director Wray right now?
I think Director Wray needs to show some leadership in terms of responding to the fact that there is a crisis in the headquarters of the FBI and changes need to be made, and he could show that leadership right now.
Well, why do you think Andrew McCabe is still there after everything we've learned about him, the deputy FBI director, and apparently Jeff Sessions, according to reports, leaned on Wray to get rid of him, and Wray said, I'll quit. That's one report. I'll quit if he goes. Now, what's that all about? Is there no chain of command at the FBI that matters?
I don't know. I do understand that Mr. McCabe may be leaving very soon, and if that's the case, that's one step, but I think the director has more work to do.
And Congressman, before we let you go, the Mueller investigation seems to be very leaky over the last 24 hours. We learned that Jeff Sessions had been called to testify, Comey, on that. They're looking to bring in the president to testify on his firing of Comey and perhaps other matters. Concerns about the leaks coming out of this very high-profile, very important investigation when the president seems to be getting good news on other fronts, such as the government shutdown?
Oh, it's very concerning. And this is not a huge organization, so you would think that if you're operating an unbiased, impartial, and effective investigation, you would have a control over something as basic as leaks by the relatively small number of people who are doing that work for the special counsel.
Yeah. Well, it just indicates, again, there's an animus toward the president, and they're only leaking stuff for the most part that is negative toward the president. And otherwise, you'd see leaks of all types. But, Congressman, thanks for staying on this issue for us. We'll check back with you soon. We really appreciate it. And by the way, given all we just discussed, it's time to take a really close look at the integrity of the entire Mueller investigation, the entire team. We're going to do that next with the man who conducted the grand jury questioning of Bill Clinton. And later, why is the NFL rejecting a Super Bowl ad by veterans? I kid you not. Stay right there.
Let your inner light loose with One-A-Day Women's. A complete multivitamin specially
in the Justice Department. There is now a real question about the overall integrity of the special counsel's probe in the Russia investigation as a whole. Let's discuss this now with attorney Harmeet Dillon in San Francisco. She's a national committee woman of the Republican National Committee for California. And here in studio is former Deputy Independent Counsel Saul Weisenberg, the man who conducted the grand jury questioning of former President Bill Clinton. We're going to get into the possible questioning of Donald Trump in the coming weeks as well. Let's start with you, Harmeet, on this. Well, you now know the facts. We have missing texts covering a period of critical 5 months when Michael Flynn was questioned up to the day that Comey was actually appointed as, Mueller was appointed as special counsel. What does this say to you? Just innocent mistakes, updating problems with the software? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, I would say that in a vacuum, you might believe that the software updating at the FBI was flawed and didn't capture some of these things. But in the grand context of what's been going on in this situation, and we have revelation after revelation after revelation, when the FBI actually found out about Strzok's behavior in the affair between him and Lisa Page back in July, to me as a lawyer, it's shocking that the United States Marshals didn't go in right away to seize the devices of both of these FBI employees to find out what was on them. I mean, you can't take their word for it, given their breach of the rules. So even you go in and you get a warrant, and you get a subpoena in this case, and you take the hard drives or you take the phones and you forensically examine them. So it's shocking to me that today the Attorney General comes out and says we're going to look into this. Who's been, watching the shop over the last 6 months, and why wasn't that done back in July? So that's one thing that concerns me. And then, of course, you've got the memo and the troubling revelations about FISA. I mean, to me, no way. I have a very hard time believing that it's a coincidence. I don't believe it.
Saul.
Oh, I think it's very unlikely that it's a coincidence. And
I mean, you guys are both really smart people, and you're hedging. This is obviously not a coincidence. These are 5 months. 2 people negative on Trump, wanted to kill him off. They wanted an insurance policy. The idea that in any way, shape, or form, there's a .000. This is like OJ's innocent. I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous.
Well,
there
look,
is no way this is an updating glitch. This is ridiculous.
Here's the key.
You guys are being way too judicious on this. I'm sorry.
Well, we don't know for sure, and you don't know for sure. But here's the key. Here's the key.
I'd bet a lot of money on it.
I'm actually going to agree with you on this, if you let me. But here's the key. The FBI was asked, is this just for this case, this glitch?
Yeah.
Or is it other people's phones and other cases, and they refused to comment? That's a really simple question. Did this happen with other phones and in other cases? And by the way, if it happened in other cases, there's a real Brady problem. You know, in criminal cases, you've got to turn this stuff over. You've got to turn exculpatory information over. Well, so that's an easy question the FBI should be able to answer. They need to decide whether they're the Federal Bureau of Investigation or the fan belt inspectors. And they need to do it quickly.
So they said in December, mid-December, that they told the committee they had turned over all texts. Like, document production, I've done them, you've done them. It's really thorough. There are computer programs that actually mark the documents that you have to separate out, ones that are privileged, ones that aren't. And how do you tell them, oh, we've sent it all over, and then like this 2 days ago, oh, well, by the way, 5 months are missing. It just happens to be the two most controversial people other than maybe Andrew Weissman.
Well, have you ever been involved in FOIA litigation with the DOJ? They do that all the time. All the time they go into judges and say, after having said under oath, we've provided you everything, gee, we screwed up. So
let's talk about Trump maybe being questioned by Mueller. What do you make of this? And it's a good idea for him to be questioned. You have Roger Stone said it would be cataclysmic. It's a trap. He shouldn't go. But what's the alternative?
You know, when you originally asked me about this, I said that if it was a normal client, you would never let him be interviewed. And if they subpoenaed him, you would take the fifth. And I told you, I assume Trump doesn't want to take the liability, political liability of taking the fifth. But I actually think if anybody could pull it off, it would be President Trump, and it would be a white-collar defense lawyer's dream for President Trump to say, basically, ladies and gentlemen, the Fifth Amendment protects the innocent as well as the guilty against artful questions from a sophisticated prosecutor, and I am innocent, but I am going to exercise my constitutional right, which every criminal defendant has and should exercise.
He'll also say, Harmeet, right, that this whole thing has been a circus, totally tainted. This whole thing is the fruit of the poisonous tree, and I'm not gonna give you the rope to hang me with. I mean, I guess he could say that. Politically, maybe you could play it both ways with the base, but what are your thoughts?
Well, it would be a high-risk strategy, but as Saul said, if anybody could pull it off, the president could do that. And, you know, he has the ultimate authority, and he's the head of this government. So, you know, the political calculations, though, you know, he has a lot of things he needs to get done here, and we know how the Democrats are going to react to that. So I'm sure he's getting able counsel. I certainly hope he is on that issue. But I've got to say, you know, back to the investigation itself, it appears to be corrupt at many levels. And that disturbs me, and it's really undermining.
No, okay. Saul doesn't think it's corrupt, and Saul and I have been going round and round on this for how many months now? 3 months. So good to see you in person, by the way.
Yeah, likewise.
So nice to see you in person.
But if you're talking about by the investigation, if you mean the Mueller investigation, I see virtually no evidence that it's corrupt. I think he's a totally honorable person, and he's not free of having made some mistakes, but that's the way it goes. Everybody makes mistakes.
I didn't say Mueller was corrupt. I said the investigation was corrupted, and it absolutely is. I stand by that.
Yeah,
Which investigation are you talking about?
The Mueller investigation, and all of the people with conflicts of interest in it, and all of the people with disappearing evidence that we've just seen today, and the lack of accountability. I think that's shocking.
That's not the Mueller. That's not part of the Mueller investigation.
They worked on the Russia investigation.
Yeah, but the missing texts are not involved.
They're people. Yeah. Well,
it's the same people. It's the same people.
It's amazing. I've got to say, we're out of time, guys. But it's amazing. There are only like 3 people who do all the interviews. Like, why not spread around some of the love to the other poor investigators who are working on really boring cases? We'll have you back as this moves forward, especially perhaps with Trump talking behind closed doors, or not. Maybe you did yours on camera with President Clinton, correct?
We did. It was kind of a historical accident.
Absolutely, absolutely. And guys, have you heard that? By the way, Hollywood, after everything that's happened with Weinstein and so forth, is getting ready to have its big Me Too moment at the Oscars. One problem: they just gave a Best Picture nod to a movie that actually undermines the entire message. And meanwhile, the FBI rejecting a Super Bowl ad by a veterans group. Yes, I am telling you the truth. You will not believe the story. Don't go away.
Something tells me you ain't got the nerve to fire that woman.
Cultural stories of the day. First up, at the height of Hollywood's Me Too moment, they have just given Oscar nominations to a film glorifying statutory rape. Yes, that's true. After the year they had, what are they doing? Let's bring in Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo. Tell us about this film, Call Me By Your Name.
You remember we talked about this weeks ago. Yeah. This is the film where Armie Hammer, a 24-year-old man, falls in love and has relations with a 17-year-old boy. This is being celebrated. It got 4 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture today by the Academy Award. And there's really little to commend it. No one's seeing this movie.
Okay, let's look at the box office. There's a scene. A short scene, please. Yeah. Box office for the Best Picture nominees, including this Call Me By Your Name. Call Me By Your Name, 9,100,000. Darkest Hour, that's the Churchill, 41 million. Gary Oldman should win. Dunkirk, 188. That's a big tour de force. I think it's more than that, actually. Get Out, 175 million. Is that right?
Yes.
Lady Bird, 39 million. Phantom Thread, 6 million. The Post, 40. Shape of Water, 30 million. There are not a lot of big
These are art house movies
here.
These are art house movies, with the exception of Dunkirk, the Churchill movie Darkest Hour, and Get Out. Get Out was the big horror flick, the Jason Peele's film that took off, cost him $5 million to make. He made $177 million.
But then didn't Sundance Film Festival just have a film that it allowed the director to express what she had gone through as a victim of child sex abuse, which is horrific, and I salute her for trying to express that. However, on the screen, they actually depict a scene where a child, over many scenes, is raped on scene. Now, I've read the description and I couldn't finish
it's a horrific thing. I won't even go into it, but it's a 13-year-old girl. It's called The Tale. She's abused in the film, but she thinks she's having a special relationship with this older man. Now, in that film, clearly, child rape is portrayed as a bad thing. In 2015, the Academy Award was given to a film called Spotlight, calling out child abuse in the Catholic Church. But now, the abuse of a 17-year-old boy by a 24-year-old man.
It's consensual, though. He can give consent at 17, which you can't according to most.
No.
Well, any state law that I could think of. Well, maybe a few states.
There's a reason consent exists, and Hollywood better get its story straight. Is the abuse of minors a bad thing, or is it at times a romantic interlude and something to be celebrated? I think it's always the former, and Hollywood has to figure that out.
Well, Me Too is confusing.
Me too.
Men too. Me too. What's going on in this NFL program that they hand out at the Super Bowl? It's printed, it's not the glossy thing. There's a controversy involving an ad that was presented by a veterans group. What's going on?
It's a veterans group. It's called American Vets. It's just an ad that says, please stand, hashtag, please stand, and the flag is in the image.
There it is.
There you see
that's really controversial.
They wanted to put this forward, and the NFL issued a statement, rejected the ad, said, it's too political.
What?
Wait, I'll read you the exact.
They just continue to stab themselves in the feet every week.
This is an unbelievable way to undermine your audience. I mean, at a time when the audience is rebelling against you, ticket sales are down, merchandise
I'm still upset the Vikings lost.
The NFL says, I have it here somewhere. We can.
So they're all wicked upset about this.
Well, the NFL said it's too political. We don't accept political ads. That's not true.
Well, how many political ads have they had?
Think about the last year. Remember the Budweiser ad where Adolphus Budweiser, as an immigrant, comes in and he's mistreated. Then there was the Lumber 84 ad where the mother and the child crashed the border. They were in a truck.
Oh, yeah, there it is, the immigrant ad. That was all pushing amnesty.
These were all political. And at the end of the 84 Lumber ad, it reads, the will to succeed is always welcome here. I hope that philosophy goes for our vets who want to salute the flag.
Isn't that pretty political? I mean,
it's all political. So why are you saying these veterans can't put their ad in your
because
program?
that ad, that please stand ad, puts up a mirror to the NFL, and they don't like what they see. And they don't want to be called on what they did to themselves and what they did to a game that I love. They politicized it. It was a big mistake. Those veterans should be able to. They should fly a banner over the stadium if they allowed it for security reasons.
In the name of fairness, they should let the air ride, given what veterans and the audience have had to endure throughout this season of the kneeling and what many see as a disrespect.
How about what the veterans have done to keep us free so they can go to a game and get paid a lot of money for it? Raymond, thanks so much as always. And by the way, as President Trump prepares to hit the Davos Economic Forum, fancy, his critics are saying he's diminishing America's status in the world. How sad. John Bolton responding.
I'm Jenny, and I quit smoking with Chantix. I had tried to quit before. I had tried the patch. I tried to go cold turkey. It didn't work for me.
To discuss trade, border security, America First policy, cybersecurity, with all these fancy schmancy people. In a new Gallup poll, if it's believed, to be believed, worldwide approval of America's leadership is down under Trump, dropping 18 points from Obama's last full year in office. Perhaps the president is unpopular with some leaders in the world because, hey, he's boldly defending America on the world stage. And he's stating that he's uncomfortable with some of the globalist policies along the way.
Muslim nations must be willing to take on the burden if we are going to defeat terrorism and send its wicked ideology into oblivion. NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations.
We can no longer tolerate these chronic trade abuses, and we will not tolerate them. We are not going to let the United States be taken advantage of anymore. I am always going to put America first.
Of course, they hate that. Okay, the media and the left cannot accept the reality that Trump is for the USA first and foremost.
An America First agenda is the opposite of what is welcome at the World Economic Forum.
If it's a fractured world, many in Davos blame President Donald Trump for doing the fracturing.
He is the president of the United States of America. That comes with responsibility of moral leadership. You are the beacon of hope for so many countries around the globe. He embarrasses us.
Oh, Terry. To respond, I'm joined by former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Fox News contributor John Bolton. When I hear a former Clintonista talking about morality up there, John, I love it.
Yeah,
it's
who
great.
Embarrasses who here?
No, I mean, I love that montage of Trump on the world stage because he goes out there and says, look, this is who I am. I want to work with you, but I'm for, just like you're for your country. I'm going to fight for what's best in America's interest. And all these elites back home are, I can't believe he would say that stuff. That's outrageous.
Yeah, no, I think that's why he's going to Davos, is to take the message into the lion's den. And it should be quite a confrontation.
Now, a lot of people are saying, why go? Why bother? These people hate you. Why go? I think it's good for him to go because just like when he went to NATO and said, look, we're going to live up to our responsibilities, but hey, Mr. Macron and Angela, pony up. I think you get more respect that way. I don't think cower in Washington. It's fine.
Well, I think it's an opportunity for him. I think coming off this triumph of the Democratic collapse on the budget confrontation, the tax cuts in December, I think it's time to build up some momentum. So there's an element of risk to it. But look, the duty of the President of the United States is to advance American interest. If Terry McAuliffe or others want to say it's the duty of the President of the United States to advance some other country's interest, why don't they come out and say it?
Well, the numbers are pretty brutal in this survey. This is the U.S. News 2018 in the best countries report net approval rating. Donald Trump has a negative 33%. Putin has only a negative 11%. Xi Jinping, negative 1%. Hey, the Chinese are doing well in this poll because they own everybody now. And Merkel gets a positive 36 for letting all those migrants in. Look, you wreck your country, you let 1 million migrants in, you get 36% approval rating. That's a good deal for her.
This doesn't tell us there's something wrong with Donald Trump. It tells us there's something wrong with the Europeans. I mean, one of the reasons that we're down in Europe in particular is new revelation. Donald Trump is not Barack Obama. Well, of course the Europeans liked Barack Obama's policies. They thought he was a European just like them. I mean, really.
Citizen of the world.
Enough said, yes,
We're
absolutely.
all globalists now. What did they think, going back to Reagan? I mean, I worked for President Reagan right out of college, and nobody liked Reagan. For the most part, it was Thatcher, John Paul II, and Lech Walesa, and pretty much Reagan. I mean, we had some allies, but a lot of them hated Reagan.
Opinion levels for strong American presidents tend to be negative. For example, in France, at the height of Marshall Plan aid to rebuild the French economy after World War II, America had negative approval ratings. So, look, any American president who cares about polls like these is the wrong choice for the job.
Now, when you look back on your time in government and you think about what you're seeing now, we talked earlier in the show, and our audience really cares about the integrity of this Mueller investigation. He's had a long and very storied career in law enforcement, respected civil servant. But when you have reams and reams of text messages that just go missing between two key figures in this investigation, and now we have mentions of secret societies and insurance policies and memos that Democrats don't want released. Imagine if this were happening during the Bush administration, what the left would be saying.
We'd be in the slammer now. Look, I'm an alumnus of the Justice Department. Yep. I worked for Ed Meese and Dick Thornburg in the Reagan administration. I have enormous respect for the street agents, the guys who pound the bricks at the FBI. But there is something wrong at the top of that institution. And I don't think that Director Wray, the new director, understands that yet. I don't think Attorney General Jeff Sessions, a longtime friend of mine, has taken aggressive enough action. The only way we're going to cure this rot within the Bureau is to get all the facts out. It's going to be unpleasant for a lot of people, but the American people need to have faith in their law enforcement system, and right now that faith is eroding.
I think it's shattered until you're right. Either we learn everything or we purge the department.
There's too much distrust at this point to say we're going to release a little bit, but not this and not the other thing. This is a time to get back on track, and I hope Sessions does it. Just open it up.
John, great to see you as always, Ambassador Bolton. In just a minute, by the way, we're going to tell you how California is planning to register illegal immigrants to vote. My question is, what took them so long?
In 3 days, see the film critics are calling stunning, magnificent, beautiful, astounding.
Automatically when they obtain or renew their driver's license, regardless of whether they're U.S. citizens. As leftist politicians import voters, they still don't seem to understand that there are actually dangers when this happens. And the latest evidence, an illegal immigrant Uber driver was arraigned just yesterday. He's alleged to have raped and robbed 4 young women in San Luis Obispo. Let's get into this now with New York Times bestselling author Ann Coulter in New York. And here in studio with me is Jose Aristimuño, who's a former Deputy National Press Secretary for the Democratic Party. Jose, let's start with you on this. Registering people to vote who are here illegally. Explain that one to me.
Well, let's be clear here. This policy that's going to be implemented in April, this is what's going to happen. Voters, if you are in the country and you're undocumented, you can gain a driver's license in California.
Right, you already can do that.
Right, but there are federal limitations, including you cannot register to vote if you're an undocumented immigrant in California. And they were very clear. The state of California has been very clear. You will not be eligible to vote if you're an undocumented immigrant. It's that simple.
And why is the big fuss if that's all it is? You'll be eligible, but you can't vote.
Yes, illegal aliens are big rules followers. Even before California was issuing driver's licenses to illegals and automatically registering them to vote, there are big Hispanic organizations and leftist organizations generally in California in the 90s that managed to steal an election from Bob Dornan. I mean, they found hundreds of illegally registered to vote illegal aliens who were voted for. Already 60%, or about 60% of all ballots in California are sent in by mail. It's not even the illegal aliens who need to go and vote. Don't worry, they'll be voted for. You just need them registered to vote.
And why did Trump close that voter commission? Because the states would not cooperate. You know, the voter fraud commission, they made a big deal of it. The left kind of mocked him, and then they closed it. Was that because states just wouldn't give the information, or they couldn't find any evidence, or what was it?
I'm not sure, but I don't think it was a good idea, except that I think it might have just been moved to an official investigation with the Department of Justice. Incidentally, because of California's giving driver's licenses to illegal aliens, you know, people are always saying, oh, it's so burdensome for people to have to get an ID in order to vote. Well, now all legal residents of California are required to now get a secondary ID in addition to their driver's license because of a federal law that says, hey, all of you states that are issuing phony ID laws, we need a real one now. So there's now the real driver's license you have to go into the inner circle of hell and register for all over again. And when they start giving that to illegal aliens, they'll have to have the real ID. So they don't mind burdening their citizens that way. But yes, this is all about voting. Illegal immigration, legal immigration, but certainly illegal immigration, DACA, it is 100% about voting. At least California makes it clear.
It's not
Jose,
true.
go ahead.
Everything she's saying, it's false. The reality here is that this new policy that's been implemented in California, what it's happening here, this is about democracy. This is about registering people to vote. There are 4 to 5 million people in California who are eligible to vote, and we need to get them registered. That is about democracy. It's not about the undocumented the community. It's about the United States of America.
Every 2 new immigrants to the United States, on average, sponsor about 7 family members. So we're not talking about spouses and minor children. That's always been respected and time-honored tradition in American immigration. But what the president is very concerned about is that of the 1 million green cards that are given out every year, annually, more than 400,000 of those are this kind of extended family chain migration. Now, I know you originally came from Venezuela, or your parents came from Venezuela, but that's a minor child with parents. We're talking about uncles, cousins, and most Americans are against that. That's going to be a big part of this ongoing immigration debate. Where do you stand on this?
Look, that's fine. We can negotiate. The Democrats have been trying to negotiate with the president every single day.
Chuck Schumer just took the wall off the negotiating table. That's gone. He just agreed to it. Now he took it off.
Look, you want to talk about somebody who's on, off all the time? That's Donald Trump. We don't know where he stands on immigration.
Won. What do you mean? He just won the whole debate on this.
Well, he shut down the government. He shut down the government. We know that he said before that this will be good for America to shut down the government.
He didn't shut down. He actually won the whole debate.
He shut the government. A majority of Americans know that this was the government's fault.
That's why the left-wing groups are so mad right now.
The GOP controls the White House. You guys control the Congress.
All right, guys. I wish we could have an hour on this subject, but don't go away. We'll be right back. We have a final punctuation point on a very big news night. And remember, follow me on Twitter and Facebook as well.
I've got to say, I love the new place.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I took your advice and had Geico help with renter's insurance.